Modern, old. Hi, it's Todd from Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here, and today I am revisiting a weapon that I have filmed before. So I made this a few years back, and it is a magazine-fed longbow, medieval style built. And the reason that I'm doing it is that this one, modern, old. The modern one here is on the market, and I've finally got my hands on one to play with it. So it's a great opportunity to see what these two things are about. But first, we need to go back to the beginning of the story and a mad guy called Joe Gibbs.
And let me show you its features.
So that man is Joe Gibbs of the Slingshot channel, and he makes crazy films about crazy things that shoot in crazy ways. And he got, and I think it's fair to say, obsessed with putting a magazine onto a longbow. And so that's what he did. And he invented what he called the instant Legolas. Get it? Jorg thought that this might just have changed medieval warfare forever. But the thing is, to do that, it has to be possible in a medieval way. Medieval materials, medieval techniques. So he sent this prototype to me to have a look at and to copy and rebuild in a medieval way. So I did. And this was the result. So it works medieval style, medieval technology. But the thing is, of course, it was based on Joe Gibbs' ideas. It was never a real medieval weapon, but it could have been. When I made this bow, I wanted to know really what its medieval possibilities would have been. And I'm not going to find that out with a 40-pound bow like this and bolts which are way overweight for it. So I built it for a 120-pound longbow and called in Joe Gibbs to come and shoot it. Now see what happens when a real man handles this. I made a couple of films all about this with Joe Gibbs, seriously looking at what difference it would have made to the medieval world. But that was 4 years ago. And in the meantime, Jorg has been playing around and developing up his prototype, teamed up with EK Archery and developed the whip shot. And yes, it really is fun. Now, when it comes to archery, I really am a traditionalist. I like my bows to be made of wood. This is not the sort of thing that I would generally spend money on. However, and I have to be honest, EK Archery sent it to me. But actually not to review, really just to mess about with, because I'm involved in an amazing project with them, world-beating project with them, that we're going to have a look at later in the year, but not this day. We all know that bows are not used in war anymore, and I'm not going to labour that point. Perhaps the old crossbow by Special Forces, and then I also met a woman who lived through the siege of Sarajevo. And she told me they used them down on the front lines because they shoot through sandbags. Cool, huh? So I'm sure I don't need to convince you, this is not a weapon of war. But what about this? There were far fewer guns around then, around 1350, 1400. Would this have been a weapon of war? When I made the medieval version, I asked Joe to come and test it because I wanted a powerful bow. But 120 pounds was all he could manage. The thing is, when you're shooting a heavy bow, and Joe shoots 160-pound bows regularly and can shoot more, you need a very particular posture. Might look weird to you, but all the heavy bow shooters use something similar. Now, he wasn't able to really engage his muscles as he wanted to using this. That restricted him. So it's never going to have the medieval punch that Joe's longbow on its own does. So actually, for armor penetration, that sort of thing, distance, probably no good. But what about suppressive fire? Well, we drop the bow weight and check Joe out now. Of course, with suppressive fire, and a magazine, you will have to reload to keep going. Let's see how these two weapons compare. There are lots of changes that I could make to this, like speed loaders, for instance, and some sort of anti-jam system and so on. But the point is, looking at it through medieval people's eyes, that was the exercise of this. It's easy now because we have speed loaders to go, oh, just put a speed loader on it. They hadn't been invented. And there's so much about this really quite a complex bit of machinery with sort of fine-tuned components in it that they just wouldn't have had. It's not their language. Your average guy on the street didn't deal with complex machinery like this. He didn't know what a jam was. We know it from early childhood. Even if we're not trained, we understand the concept of a jammed magazine. They didn't have that. What about grit in the slide rails? Or the clamping mechanism coming loose? Or the trigger not working as it's supposed to be? All of these things we can look at from our modern viewpoint. Your guy in the street didn't have that. And when it comes to complexity as well, they didn't have standardized parts. These would all be craft made. They wouldn't be interchangeable. It's just a very complicated bit of kit for your average ploughman, yeoman from the street. Let's conclude about their role in war. Well, the whip shot, of course, it doesn't have one. Would this have had a role in war? Well, the thing is, it does give a fantastic rate of suppressive fire for a bit. But it comes at a lot of negative things. Complexity, the possibilities of jams, unfamiliar equipment, a lower poundage. What happens after your first magazine load? You've still got to go again. And as we saw, there's not that much of a difference between regular bow shooting and magazine shooting. So there's a whole host of reasons that this just would not have taken off. Not for warfare. And part of the reason it wouldn't take off for warfare is that society was set up to train people with a regular longbow. That's what they were used to, that's what they did. Every Sunday, other days when they weren't at work, over all kinds of terrain, all kinds of distances. English archers, most archers, were formidable with their familiar weapon. They didn't need something else. And then we come to hunting. Would there be any use there? Sorry to interrupt the film, guys, but some of you probably don't know that I make medieval replica stuff. Knives, swords, daggers, crossbows, maces, all kinds of things. All kinds. And just like this film, I try and get the detail right. I'm not interested in faking it. I'm not interested in pretending. I make the real stuff. So if you want what they had in the medieval days, come down to toddcutler.com, or for bespoke work, toddsworkshop.com. Anyway, back to the film. Modern hunting archery uses really powerful, really accurate bows. And the thing is, the whip shot is accurate, and at the 45-pound limit up at the top there, it's probably just about powerful enough. But I would argue, if you're the sort of archer that relies on multiple shots, needs a magazine and thinks that's a great idea, I'd kind of question whether you should be bow hunting at all. But that aside, the prey has also got to let you, because if it doesn't hang around after the first shot, there won't be a second. Medieval hunting was often done with broadheads like this. Take a look at that. Now the thing is, arrows have flights on the back because you use those to stabilise, to steer it. You don't want flights on the front, certainly not as well. The wings on here just act like flights. You're steering it from both ends. And what that means is it doesn't matter how good an archer you are, how well made the arrow is, it will not be stable, it will veer off. So medieval hunting was done at really, really short ranges. It was all about stalking. And you can see that in loads of medieval manuscripts, but have a look at these pictures from Gaston Phoebus, wrote fantastic books about hunting. And of course the other aspect is that prey animals react really fast, so you have to be very close because they'll hear you and move if you're not. Now their reaction times are much faster than mine, for example, and there certainly is not going to be a second shot. This distance is 25 metres. Let's see what I can do. But I am of course protected, don't try this at home. And so the point is, if I can step aside from this and I do not have the reflexes of a deer is not going to be here when it hears that noise. It'll be somewhere else. Real close. That's what medieval hunting was about. So personally, I cannot see a use for the modern version in hunting, and I certainly cannot see a use for the medieval version in hunting. So let's have a look at target. Archery in England was an incredibly regulated activity, and every man had to own a bow and arrows. If you want to know about all of the laws, and there were many, check this out here. For maintenance of archers, it's got everything. It's brilliant. But the thing is, archery was at the social centre of men's existence. So every Sabbath day they had to go shooting, every holy day they had to go shooting. And the thing is, they'd shoot for distance. They'd go roving, so they'd be shooting across valleys, up hills, down hills, through bushes, close distance, short distance. It was absolutely the centre to men's life. And that meant that they were just, even a bad shot was probably really quite a good shot, because they just did it so much. So in many respects, this would offer a level of improved accuracy. You could even put sights on it. But compared to what the men were used to having, the lack of flexibility with this and the reduced power would not make it suitable. This is what you'd want. And then what about the whip shot for target archery? Well, from the other people's point of view, very calm, very zen, very focused activity. The last thing they would want is somebody coming along and just pumping bolts out with this thing. So they'd throw you out. But the other thing as well is, if you want accuracy, you need to be calm. You need to be in the zone. That's what it's all about. Basically sniping with bows. This thing is not that. So neither of these weapons are suited to target archery. So here we are with my conclusion. And I think neither of these bows are suited to war, neither are suited to hunting, and neither are suited to target. But there is something I touched on earlier, which is very important. And that is fun. So I'm going to put this one down. It's a little bit clunkier. As you'd expect, modern technology has improved things. Got my coat on for my Matrix moment. What is not to like about that? But the thing about medieval and Renaissance people is, just like us, they love to gadget. And we spend money on them, we use them, we buy them. And just like this balestrino, which is a beautiful little 16th, 17th century item, which actually technically was illegal in England in the 16th century, but anyway, they loved things like this. They would have loved things like this. But I'll say it again, they didn't have it. But not for war, not for target, not for hunting, for fun. I think I'm going to have another go with this one. Anyway, see you again.